Since we're talking about communists, I gotta say the last episode of The Watchmen, for all its flaws, did a very accurate representation of communism. They got this guy called the Red Scare, and he beats people up, violates their civil liberties to the point where they can't differentiate if he's a Nazi or not. And then he goes to the poor, the working class, the one that communists say they want to protect, calls them racist fucks and abuses their civil liberties as well, while having a mass police force behind him. And I was like, yeah, that actually is what communists do. Yeah, I can't complain. That is definitely an accurate representation. But anyway, our topic today is the worrying trend in America that socialism and communism are hot among millennials. And apparently, when questioned about who would be a threat to world peace, 27% said that it's President Trump, 22% said that Kim Jong Un, 15% tapped Vladimir Putin. Yeah, Russia with its state-of-the-art, massively funded military. But it's okay to be young and a leftist. There's that saying: if you're young and you're not a leftist, you don't have a heart. If you're over 30 and you're not a conservative, you don't have a brain. So that's not something that shocks me. The thing that is interesting, though, is that in America right now, there aren't any reasonable moderate leftists. It's simply not the case. Like, if you look at the Democratic debates, what the people are doing is they try to out-left each other. And once you have out-left someone, you can't go back on it. So, for example, I think Elizabeth Warren, I might be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure I'm not. Elizabeth Warren says she wants to give illegals healthcare. Okay? Now, she can't go back and say, whoa, like, maybe that wasn't such a good idea. Like, she can look at her demographics, like people who vote for her, and see that they don't really appreciate what she said. She can't go back on it, because then she'll be accused of flip-flopping. So once you went left, you can't go back right. You need to just, stay where you are or keep going further left. So because of this, and because you have, like, really far to the left politicians, they're dragging the entire party to the far left. So someone that just wants to vote for a central leftist, for someone that has more reasonable policies and they're not radical extremists, they can't. They don't have that. So that is a problem. The second problem is that most Americans do not understand what socialism is, and I can tell that from just talking with them, from just speaking with them. They do not differentiate between the government seizing the private property of people and just having public healthcare like we have here in Europe, right? Like, there is a difference between social program and socialism. And I think the politicians, the people in charge, they know this. And some of them actually want real socialism, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, for example. Like, no, she wants the government to control everything. But people who listen to her, they think, oh, that's just public healthcare. That's just public education. No, it's not. All right. So I think this is one of the reasons why socialism is trending. Is because people generally don't know about it. Like, they think, oh, socialism, that's public healthcare, right? So according to this, a new survey released by the Washington, D.C. Victims of Communist Memorial Foundation reflect that if the younger generation gets out and votes in 2020, those running for office on the far left have reason to be hopeful. So the number of people that would vote socialist increased. 70% of the millennials say they are likely to vote socialist. Socialism is a dirty word to the president and many of his supporters. Yeah, but this is the thing, like, this is a problem in America. Back during the Cold War, you had the government make anti-socialist cartoons or cartoons that promote capitalism, cartoons that explain how the sausage is made, how capitalism works. And they're really good. They're really good at explaining the ideology and, addressing the criticism of communism. You don't have that anymore. You do not have any single information or propaganda coming from the right. It's just propaganda coming from the left. Propaganda, by the way, is not something inherently evil. It's just a tool. It depends on how you use it. You can have a hammer and you can crack someone's head with it. You can have a hammer and you can build a house. But yeah, I mean, the right do not do any sort of propaganda in order to, I guess, inform people of why right-wing issues are important and why the right wing thinks the way the right wing thinks. They don't. The left is really great at it. The left has co-opted universities. They co-opted comic books. They're co-opting anime right now. I'm reading an article on how they're trying to infiltrate Japan. Like Netflix is pumping a lot of money into building pro-leftist anime schools in Japan. It's interesting, right? Like they're investing so much cash, and I think like the leftists are also convinced they're ideologically motivated into pushing their belief system. And they're willing to put money. They're willing to put money on the table. The right wing, they don't. The right wing is interested in making money. So you will see like all right wingers, do their own things individually, and only when it's like a big time of crisis or something like this they come together. But they're not interested in promoting their ideas. At least I don't see them being interested in promoting their ideas. I mean, Trump, for example, he's got access to his Twitter. He could point to some websites or something that talks about the evils of communism or the evils of socialism, and you make like your opposition seem really unhinged for defending it. It's quite easy to do, but they're not doing it. No one is doing it, right? So to me, it's a little bit unsurprising that so many millennials want to vote socialist. They have no idea what socialism is. Their parents don't know. And the only thing they hear about, the only evil ideology on earth, the only evil ideology, the rest are good, is Nazi. Nazi is evil. It's like, yeah, but do you notice that don't say National Socialist? Of course they don't. They don't want the young people to confuse the two things, right? And I'm not saying National Socialism is socialism, because it's not Marxist socialism. But every single philosopher from the National Socialist ideology used to be a socialist before. You know how they're like, oh, jokes lead to violence. Stop rape jokes, it leads to violence. Well, okay, then stop socialism, it leads to National Socialism. Anyway, so the president of the Victims of Communist Memorial Foundation, I was unaware that even exists, says he's troubled by the findings of the poll. The historical amnesia, well, I wouldn't call it amnesia because you'd have to remember things. I don't think Americans are actually educated at all into what socialism is. I think like American education starts with World War II, and that is it. When it comes to Europe, right? Like they study other things. They focus more on American history. They don't focus at all on European history, which is a problem in my opinion. And a lot of historical amnesia is something that Islam does as well. Like you look at states like Qatar, and they pump around $100 million per year at American universities. And yeah, they incentivize historians to have historical amnesia. Like when talking about the Crusades, they don't mention the hundred of years aggression wars, or as I mentioned, they don't talk about the conquest of Islam in Europe. And the historical teacher isn't lying. Like all he has to do is to take the grant, take the money, and just forget to talk about certain things. So it's the same with the left. I assume it's like they're not going to talk about the famine in Ukraine. They're not going to talk about Lysenkoism. They're not going to talk about the police state that the USSR had. Like they're not going to talk about a lot of these things, which is quite sad. And again, the right wingers could invest money in starting private universities and teach about these things and make sure that they are covered, but they're not. This is why the left keeps winning. It's a money game. The right wing does not pay money in order to promote its ideology. I mean, I'm pretty sure you might find it here and there, but you won't see a multi-million-dollar corporation like Netflix being co-opted by conservatives. And then once they get into power, they start pushing, conservative values through the cartoons and the movies there. You just won't see that. And this is why the left wins, because they're actually looking at this as a war plan. And it's like, okay, we got Star Wars. Now what do we get? All right, we need to get after the anime. We need to somehow, crack that wall, crack that Japanese wall, and then get in on it. That's how they view it. Like take DC Comics, for example. There was a time where they went really progressive to the point where they changed the characters. This is Power Girl before, this is Power Girl after. And they did this with a lot of their superheroes to the point where their sales went down. And then they had Project Rebirth where they realized, all right, what we're trying isn't working. Let's go back to how things were. So they canceled a lot of the new diversity for hire heroes. And if you went on the Twitterati, the chatter was literally like, "Oh my God, we lost DC Comics." You know, like some generals looking at the map and it's like, "Oh, we lost control of DC Comics." So they again like did their best in order to re-infiltrate it. They got Ethan Van Sciver fired and other people, and they regained control. And it's literally what they're doing. I mean, I know people who are very far left that would never hire a conservative, like regardless of race. You know, they might be at the diversity office or something. And by the way, according to studies, diversity officers don't actually increase diversity. Like the whole thing is to make sure that you only hire left-leaning people. There is no equivalent to right-wingers, right? Like a conservative would hire anyone, even if the person that they hired might be a gender studies that would later on sue them and get them fired. So it is not an even battle, culturally speaking. Like conservatives do not follow their own interests. They do not try to promote their ideology. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Tell me a video game that promotes, I don't know, conservative values like the family unit, marriage, being a hard worker. Like these things are something that you may find in animes, but they're going after them as well. So yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised that this is happening, and I think you're going to get a lot more people that will support socialism in the future, simply because all the information they have access to is either from the left leaning, or from the left wing, or is very left wing friendly. I don't think anyone in the mainstream media talks about the horrors of communism. This is why when in the European Union, Jean-Claude Juncker unveiled a statue of Karl Marx and celebrated it, no one was appalled except a few minor people that were from Eastern Europe, but from Western Europe, very, very few outlets even wrote about it. So, like what do you expect if the right wing doesn't want to fight? They don't want to put money where the table is. Yeah, they're not going to reap the rewards. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys in the next video.